Well, hey everybody, on this video I'm going to be talking about this device. A lot of people, when they start out looking to get into the hobby of repairing vintage computers or game systems, they often struggle with all of the equipment they need, a multimeter, an oscilloscope. Well, today I'm going to solve all that for you with this device. It's less than $80 and it combines both a multimeter and an oscilloscope and a kind of crappy signal generator all into one tiny package. It's coming up right now on the Retro Hack Shack. Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Aaron. Today, yes indeed, we are going to be taking a look at this device here. It is an oscilloscope slash multimeter. Not only that, it's a function generator as well. But this looks to be a really handy tool. It's got 5 megahertz bandwidth, 25,000 count multimeter. That in itself for the price is pretty decent. It's got intelligent anti-burning. What the heck? Don't know what that means. Maybe they mean it has fuses inside? I don't know. And it has firmware upgrades. So not the as far as the packaging and what's on here, not the most exciting list of features, I will grant you that. So recently, Dave Jones on the EEV blog did a review of this multimeter, and about 9 months ago, he did a review of the predecessor of this, the single channel oscilloscope multimeter. And, you know, there are definitely some downsides to this. So if you've seen this before on his channel or something else, I know some of you are going to say, bah, that thing stinks. No, you shouldn't buy that. It's not good. Well, I'm going to try to make the case today for why some people should buy this and why I might be using it a lot more on the channel. So I'm not going to do a full oscilloscope or multimeter review because Dave Jones did that. He knows a lot more about this stuff, obviously, than I do. So I'm going to encourage you to go check out his channel for the deep dive details. I would definitely watch both videos. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you my thoughts on this device and show you how it can be used to troubleshoot vintage computer systems, game system, vintage electronics, and why I think this is a great purchase for someone that's either one, just getting into this hobby, or two, is going to like, you know, VCF events, VCF West, or sometimes people will do fix-it clinics and they just need to bring something portable with them to do some quick troubleshooting. And this device for the price should be high on your list. If you're in one of those two categories, beginner or something portable, you should definitely be looking for the price. You should definitely be looking into this. Now, I got this on AliExpress for less than $80. So certainly if you're a professional, you're probably going to be buying more expensive things like fluke meters that cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars at least. And you're going to be buying, you know, full oscilloscopes, which you can get pretty decently for down in the $200 to $400 range now, or the bigger ones, of course, which go for, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in some cases. And you may even buy a function generator if you're a professional, but probably not if you are a hobbyist. For this channel, when I'm doing troubleshooting, I'm usually using this cheap oscilloscope. I think it was like around 30 bucks from Kaiweets. And the other thing that I've been using for a while and have recently pimped out is this oscilloscope here. I did a video on this a while back where I pimped my oscilloscope. And by that, I mean, I had a USB oscilloscope and I actually added this 10-inch screen, added a little single board computer in here, and basically turned this into a nice touchscreen oscilloscope that actually works really well and takes up a lot less room on my desk here. So these are the two instruments that I use. But if you can combine those into something that's about this size, it takes up a lot less room on your desk, and I don't have to go hunting for my oscilloscope. Where did I put it? Or my meter, where did I put it? It's all in one device. So right away, we're getting some really big benefits to having those functions built right into one device. Now, the official name of this device on AliExpress is the Zoyi, Z-O-Y-E, ZT-703S. The previous model that Dave reviewed 9 months ago was the ZT-702. Don't remember if it had an S on the end, but that was the older model, which has a single channel oscilloscope. This one is different in a number of ways. Dual channel, bigger screen, like I said, more counts, those types of things. So it's a better device for sure. Even though it's called Zoyi, it's actually manufactured from a company called Zotek, and Zotek operates under many different brands as I understand it. And one of the meters that they make and sell is the Aneng meters. If you've seen those have become kind of popular for people just starting out in recent years. They would get an Aneng meter because they're pretty good quality. They work reliably for the most part, and they're inexpensive. So people have been using those. I've seen more and more people using those Aneng meters, and those come from the same company. Okay, well, let's open this box up. Quick unboxing here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I did get the version that included an extra oscilloscope probe. This one, if you get it just by default, even though it's a 2-channel scope, it will only come with one probe. So I think what they did here, obviously, is, they have these packaged up, and if someone orders the one with 2 oscilloscope probes, they just chuck another one in here and, send it to you like that. These are cheap Chinese oscilloscope probes. They are 1 times 10 times, so that's actually really nice. But yeah, nothing special, nothing fancy, nothing high quality, but they will do the job for a beginner troubleshooting vintage electronics. Here's the meter itself, and then also in here you get a USB A to USB-C for charging and data transfer. Talk more about that in a minute. And you do get your multimeter probes as well. But here it is, the star of the show. And my first reaction is this thing is actually bigger than I thought. If you can see based on my hand, in fact, let's compare it to my multimeter that I use every day. It's almost as tall, very close to being the same height. And it is actually just a little bit wider than this one. And it's pretty hefty and rugged. It doesn't feel like this thing's going to break or crack, or definitely doesn't bend. It's got a nice hard plastic probably, but it's not a soft plastic thing on it. It's got a little stand here that you can prop out. Not a great one, but you'll be seeing this probably on the channel. It actually works pretty good. I'm noticing some reflection here, and I believe that this has some plastic protection here. Oh yes, indeed it does. So I think we need to cue the music. There we go. Wow, look at that. Nice. Yeah, I think I need to start a new channel just around ASMR, where all I do is take off these little plasticky sheets off things. I'll just that'll be the only thing I do, and I do it really slow like that, and play some relaxing music or have some birds chirping in the background. I don't know what people do, but yeah, maybe that'll be my new channel on YouTube. ASMR plastic peel. They do have a warning here, not to measure things incorrectly if you're measuring current, because you can blow those fuses. So they probably don't want to have a lot of these returns come back from, people that may not know how to measure current correctly on these meters, or how much current you can measure either on one of these jacks, and then it comes back and it's, they've got to do a return, and it's a big pain in the butt probably. So I'm sure they're just trying to avoid that. And it amazes me that they're able to pack in. I mean, obviously you've got your multimeter, where you connect your multimeter probes down here at the bottom. And then you have the separate jacks up here for oscilloscope, channel 1 and channel 2 there. So it just amazes me that they're actually able to pack all of this in one small package like this. Now over here on the side, there are your test points and I believe your function generator. And then you have your USB-C jack that actually allows you to not only charge this thing, but like I said before, you can transfer, take an image and transfer that to your PC, transfer the image, which is actually really helpful for beginners, because a lot of what people are going to be doing is, troubleshooting things, trying things out, and you might go to a forum. When you go to the forum, there's going to be, people are going to say, well, can you send us a picture of the waveform, for example, or whatever. And the fact that you can take just a quick picture of this, put it on your computer, and then upload it to that forum in response to, hey, can you measure between here and here? Sometimes it's hard to get those pictures, but with here, you can just take a picture right on the device while you're measuring that bit of whatever, then you can upload that directly to the forum, and that just makes it a lot easier. All right, let's go ahead and turn this thing on. Comes right on, says Zoyi, and it happens to be in multimeter mode. And that's because I did power this up to see what the battery was like. The last state it was in multimeter mode. And so it's in multimeter mode, which is really nice. It remembers when I power it back up what state it was in. So that saves me a little bit of time. Like I said, I'm not going to go through all the features, but you can change. There's a little like oscilloscope pattern here, and there's a mode button. So if you hit the mode button, you can see it swaps over to multimeter mode. And now we can hook up a probe and start measuring things if we want to. And that's the key here, is that I've got one device, I've got 2 sets of probes, or 3 sets of probes if you count both oscilloscope probes. And that's all I need. I can do, you know, all my measurements with an oscilloscope if I need to see waveforms, etc. And if I need to measure something with the multimeter, I can just go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm just starting to get things connected so we can do some tests, and already I'm finding some really nice benefits for beginners. One of those was just now that the display will go into standby. So it will turn off eventually as well, but it'll also just turn off the display. You press the power button once and oh, there it goes. Perfect timing, dude. So yeah, if you press the button, at this point, it's not powered off. It's just saving battery by turning off the display. So if I hit it once, it's still running in the background. It's just saving battery. The other really nice thing I just discovered as I was hooking up these probes is they are very sharp compared to beginner probes. I don't believe this is gold plated. I believe this is just colored or coated with something. I don't think it's gold, but they're sharp. And the reason that's important for beginners is when you're taking your, first measurements or just doing continuity tests to see if 2 points are connected or not, a lot of times with older equipment, what happens is they get some sort of a flux coating or some other coating on the components, and beginners can be tricked into thinking that 2 points are not connected, but really what's happening is they're not making good connection with the meter probes. But these are actually really sharp and should give a beginner good results. So now I've gone into the resistance, continuity, diode, and capacitance. It's all in this function here in this section. And when you first go in, it's in auto ranging mode. It will auto range, so you don't have to change, with the older multimeters, you'd have to change various ranges when you're measuring, for example, resistance. It might be, in ohms and then in kilo ohms or whatever. This one does auto ranging within that function setting. And if I want to change this into continuity mode, which we do, I can just push the button again. Now I'm in continuity mode, and let's see now how quickly this latches. Pretty good. Let's just compare that to how quickly this multimeter, this cheap multimeter, latches. Yeah, so this cheap multimeter, I can go right to the end of the tip of the probes here, and it latches immediately, which I really like about this cheap multimeter. This one does take a little bit longer, but it's not like a whole second longer or even a half a second longer. It's just a tiny bit longer. Not something that I would worry about as a beginner at all. Okay, so before I get into some other normal things that hobbyists, beginners would test and use this for, I did want to say that it does have a function generator on here, and it's not bad, actually, for a beginner function generator. When I first watched Dave Jones's video, he made it out as like, don't even bother using it, but I don't think it's quite as bad as all that. You can go to more apps here and hit that, and then you have image view, which you can view the images you've captured, and then you have gen or signal generator. And this is where you should primarily work out of. So right now I have it set up as a sine wave, set up for 2.5 volts and frequency of 1 kilohertz. And if I go over to my other oscilloscope that I have connected to the function, the signal generator output here, you can see I am getting that. It's kind of glitchy a little bit, but I think it's because of the way that I'm auto triggering here or something. So if we go to, let's change it to a square wave, for example. Okay, now we're getting a definite square wave here, and we can go in and we can increase the frequency, decrease the frequency, or change the duty cycle. So again, we're set up for 2.5 volts. We can lower the frequency, and that'll go down in, looks like 5 hertz increments, or if we go beyond 1 kilohertz, it'll go up step up in 1 kilohertz increments. So 1 kilohertz, 2 kilohertz, 3 kilohertz, etc. We're at 5 kilohertz now. And if we go back and look on my other oscilloscope, we can see we're at, it's fluctuating a bit, but it's around 2.5 volts. And we're at 5 kilohertz here, just like it says over here. So this could be rudimentary, useful for a beginner. But to be honest, most beginners, I count myself in that category. I'm somewhere between a beginner and intermediate. I know enough to be dangerous. I honestly, in all the troubleshooting I've done over the past few years, I've never had to use a signal generator for anything for basic, 8-bit computer type troubleshooting or game system troubleshooting or anything like that. I've only recently found a use for a signal generator like this, and this is to emulate a clock. Insert your own clock if you wanted to, kind of inject that into a computer instead of the onboard clock if you wanted to maybe figure something out. So yeah, still, I would say that's probably beyond most beginners' needs. So I just wanted to mention it does have a signal generator. It's not fantastic, but it could do in a pinch. So a beginner, fine, just skip the signal generator if you don't want to use it. If you want to mess with it, at least you have something available to you. In just a few seconds, I'm going to try this out on a Commodore 64. But before I do, it's time to thank the sponsor of this episode, PCBWay. PCBWay offers inexpensive PCB manufacturing and a whole lot more. Need assembly services? No problem. They can do front side, back side, through-hole components, you name it. They also offer 3D printing, CNC milling, and more. So check out PCBWay for your next project, and I thank them for their support of the Retro Hack Shack. Okay, so I've pulled out a Commodore 64, and this one happens to be not working at the moment. I'm not really trying to fix it necessarily today, although if we do find something and are able to fix it, great, but that's not really what I'm trying to go for here. What I'm trying to do is just go over some of the normal things that a beginner might do. They get a C64, it doesn't power up or it's not working, they get no picture on the screen, whatever. What are some of the common troubleshooting activities that you would do, and how well does this device do them? That's kind of what I'm getting at here today. So if we wake this thing up, maybe the first thing we would do is we would go in and use continuity mode and just see if the fuse is working. Yep, sure enough, fuse is working fine. So that's simple enough. The other thing you might want to do is see if your voltage regulators are working. So we can go back to volt mode here. You can go ahead and turn on the C64. And if I remember my pinout correctly, very carefully, trying not to short anything, we can see if there is, 12 volts on the 12 volt regulator. And we can do the same for the 5 volt regulator. And looks good, 5.1 volts. So a little high, but that's what I think I tune my power supply to. And so that's looking really, really good. So we've tested our voltage regulators. That's all looking good. We could turn this off, and we could also, just for fun, although it doesn't work as well in circuit, we could go ahead and take a look at capacitance. So maybe these large capacitors here are off. This is a 1,000 microfarad capacitor. Again, we're testing in circuit, so let's see how fast this actually powers up this capacitor to get a reading. And it looks like it's still powering up, but it's reading 6.9, still going up, 7. That's weird that it is reading that capacitor like that. Again, this is in circuit though. Let's take a look at this smaller one here. Yep, 429, 430, still charging up. This is a 470 microfarad capacitor. It looks like it's leveling out around 450 here, 451. Let's go ahead and check this one down here. Whoops. And this is the 2200 down here at the end. Yeah, this is a 2200 microfarad, and it's at 2.2, what is that, megafarad or millifarad? Whatever the next one is up from microfarad. Anyway, it looks like that's reading spot on, no problems there at all. And of course, maybe, throughout the course of troubleshooting, you want to check out some resistors in a particular that are connected to particular resources. There's a 1K resistor, resolves pretty quickly, no problem. 1.5K, so yeah, that all works. Then we can go to diode mode. And there aren't many diodes on the C64, but here's one right down here. Yeah, and then that comes back. I wish this beeped though. I don't know if that's in the settings, but I'm not getting a beep for the diode forward voltage indicator here. Here seems to be working just fine. Swap these around, take a look. And yeah, it's wiki wonky going the other way. So you'd have to lift a leg, take this out of circuit to really measure it the other way. But usually if you get a good indicator and there's no like dead shorts on it, then that diode's okay. So yeah, I mean, you know, so far so good. Simple things are working great. Now, everything is checking out so far, but now you want to take a look at the signals. So with this thing, instead of going over and pulling out my dedicated oscilloscope, which is on the other side of the room over there, I could actually just very simply switch this into oscilloscope mode, put down my multimeter probes, and just go with the oscilloscope probe. And now we can see, without changing equipment, can actually see if we're getting signals on the CPU, let's say. However, before I can do that, I need to find a good ground connection for the ground connection on my oscilloscope probe. So I know that this is ground here, and I know that one of these up here is ground. Sure enough, right there, that's ground. So again, now we're using continuity mode. No problem. Almost immediate response on that. That looks pretty convenient right there. So already this thing is paying dividends. Okay, now first I just want to check VCC on the CPU and make sure it's getting 5 volts. So we can turn that on. I'm on 2 volts per division, so right away I'm in between the second and third division. And if I wanted to get a more numerical indication on the screen, I could go in and turn some of these things on. I'm going to just go ahead and turn on frequency for now, and we'll come back later and maybe turn on some other things. Okay, now let's check the reset line. There we go. So the reset line is high, and normal Commodore 64 behavior should be for it to stay low for half a second or so. I can't remember what the exact timing is, and then for it to go high. So let's go ahead and turn it on. Stays low and then goes high. So that's exactly, oh, look, wait, it's working. What? What? I didn't do anything. It's working. What? There could be something wrong with the CPU because I was pressing on the CPU and it's just started working. I'm still pressing on the CPU, putting some good amount of pressure so I don't slip off that pin. But it looks like I may just have either a CPU problem or a connection problem with the CPU. Well, it looks like through, perhaps through no result of using this particular oscilloscope multimeter device, I may have found that where the problem lies, which is in the connections on the pins on the CPU. So we did actually end up fixing this. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, there's definitely a problem with the connections here. So I will go troubleshoot that. But let's go ahead and take a look at the activity on the pins. Let's take a look at one of the data pins. So this is something else you could certainly do. So let's go down to one of the data pins here. And sure enough, you can see there's plenty of activity there. If I turn the menu off, I can hit auto if I want to. And that does a nice job of, kind of zooming in and showing me that there's activity there. Again, you're not going to be analyzing this in depth probably with any multimeter, but at least you're going to see, hey, is this data line being held low? Is it being held high? Does it have activity on it? Let's take a look at one of the address lines on the other side here. I believe these are the address lines. And sure enough, you can see that there's data on these address lines. So the CPU itself is definitely trying to run, but it's not making good connections with the socket. That's what I think is the root cause of this problem here. But I can see the information that I need to see very easily with this combination oscilloscope multimeter. Now, I did turn this on frequency for a reason, because I do want to take a look. I think it's pin 1. Should be able to measure the clock, and it's a 1 megahertz clock, and it definitely is measuring 1 megahertz. So that's the benefit of having, the written readouts there when you're doing something like a clock, checking the clock, is that you can see exactly what the frequency is, and you'll know if the clock is right on, as it is in this case, or close enough, or whether it's off a little bit. So yeah, that works totally fine. Okay, so inadvertently, I think I've discovered the problem with this particular Commodore 64 and why it wasn't working. It's because I had loose connections here in this socket. This is a single wipe, the older style single wipe, not even a dual wipe socket. It's certainly not the machined round pins, which are probably the best thing to use. So it's an old single wipe socket, and I had some pins that weren't making good connections, so I just folded those in a little bit to make a better connection. Let's see if this thing is fixed. Yes, it is. I was going to say, no, it's not. It just took a second. But yes, it is absolutely fixed. And this Commodore 64 is now working perfectly, due not actually directly related to this particular device. But as I was troubleshooting, I ended up finding the problem anyway, which is pretty funny. So yeah, seems to be working fine now. All right, well, I know that was kind of a quick overview, but I think this is a really cool device. So let's talk about pros and cons. On the pro side, the first thing is the price. Less than $80 shipped. You can't really find tools that fill this gap for that price point, especially a good multimeter and a decent oscilloscope all in one package. And that's the next pro, is that you have both of those really good functions in one device. You don't have to go around and switch back and forth. Now, again, if you're an electronics expert, you already have oscilloscopes and multimeters at your disposal, maybe this isn't for you unless you need to take it on the road and you need something small like that. But the fact that this is combined into one device and you can switch over easily and do both functions as you're troubleshooting something without having to get up and, change things around on your bench or on your desk, I think is really a great benefit, especially for beginners. Another pro is that this multimeter has a high degree of accuracy, really more than you need for a hobbyist level. 25,000 count multimeter is really nice to have compared to most of them on the market today, which are maybe 6,000 or 10,000 true RMS. So a high spec multimeter, even if it's not the most completely accurate, I think is a real plus. Another great thing about this is that it allows you to save snapshots of your whatever you're looking at, either your measurements, the oscilloscope readings, whatever. It allows you to take a picture of that and save it and then put it on your computer later. Really easy to do and great for uploading to forums and things like that, where people are looking for a little bit more information to help you out as you're troubleshooting your device. Now, something that's in probably both the pro and the con columns for me is the battery. The battery is definitely not going to last you as long as your typical multimeter would, but at the same time, the fact that you have USB-C jack that you can plug in and charge from just about any power source, you could leave it plugged in on your bench if you wanted to all the time. And so for me, having the ease of recharging that lithium-ion battery that's in this thing, I think is a little bit more of a pro. So short battery life, but easy to charge. So that kind of fits into both columns. The kind of crappy signal generator is a little bit of a con, but not that much, because as I said, beginners probably aren't going to have a real need for a good signal generator until they get a little bit more deep into fixing electronics and things like that. So the fact that it doesn't have a good signal generator isn't a big deal for me, but it does fit in the con column. Now, there is a real con that Dave Jones brought up in both of his videos, both on the ZT-702 and the ZT-703S.
Hang on, what's going on here? It's supposed to be 1 milliamp. I'm getting 110. If I go up to 10 milliamps, it says 1.1 amps on the milliamp range. What?
And that is the way they handle when you plug into either the 10 amp or the milliamp jack here. It still allows you up here when you're changing your functions to go into either amps or milliamps mode on the device. And what that does is it screws up your readings, basically. It doesn't know how to handle it when you're plugged into the amps jack and you're set for milliamps here or vice versa. It really doesn't know how to handle that, and you will get false readings. So from that aspect, for a beginner, it might trip people up. But I think once you're aware of that flaw and you can work around it, then it's actually not that bad. So I don't think for a beginner, they're going to be doing a whole lot of current testing. Could be wrong about that. I know I certainly didn't when I first started out, but it is something to be aware of. And I believe it's something that can be fixed in a firmware update. So switching back to the pro column again, the fact that this thing allows you to do firmware updates on it over the USB is a good pro, and it might be able to fix flaws like that and bugs like that in the future. So just be aware that for now, as of this date that I'm taping this, if you do plug into amps instead of for milliamps or vice versa, you're going to have a problem. Otherwise, this is a really great device. I'm going to be using this more and more, I think, on the channel, and I would encourage anyone that's looking into this hobby to go out and pick one of these up. This is not a sponsored promo thing, guys. This is just a meter that I saw on Dave Jones' channel. I picked it up and I thought, wow, this would be really good for beginners. Small, easy to use device that you can take anywhere with you, and it just seems to work really, really well. So I will leave a link down below, an affiliate link to AliExpress. You can go out and click on that and pick one up and support the channel at the same time. Also, if you're looking to support the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button or just like the video to show your support. I would really appreciate it. Now, if you're a fan of any of this kind of stuff, fixing up old gear or anything like that, I will leave a video for you over here on the side. So go check it out, and I'll see you over there in that one next.
End of line.